The observation deck of the International Space Station Alpha gleamed under the harsh lights of a dozen recording drones. Dr. Sarah Chen adjusted her formal uniform's collar, trying not to show her nervousness as Earth's first alien diplomatic delegation materialized 20 meters away. The Arcturians had requested this neutral location for their historic meeting, and humanity had scrambled to accommodate them. The air shimmered with a blue-green light as three tall, crystalline beings stepped through their transport field. Their translucent bodies pulsed with internal light, and their movements were unnaturally fluid, as if they were walking through water rather than air. Sarah had studied their biology for months, but seeing them in person still took her breath away. "Welcome to Earth space," Secretary General Martinez said, stepping forward with open arms, the carefully choreographed greeting they'd practiced for weeks. "We are honored to dash." The lead Arcturian's body flashed bright red, its crystalline form vibrating at a frequency that made Sarah's teeth ache. She recognized the color change as a sign of extreme agitation just as the alien's universal translator activated. "You dare to threaten us with weapons?" The alien's voice was like breaking glass. "After we came in peace?" Sarah's blood ran cold. She looked around frantically. There were no weapons. They'd been meticulously careful about that. Everything about this meeting had been negotiated down to the smallest detail. "There must be a mistake," Martinez said, maintaining his diplomatic composure. "We have no weapons here." The second Arcturian moved forward, its body now also pulsing red. "Your biological weapons are active. We detect them clearly." Sarah's mind raced. Biological weapons? The station had been completely sterilized. Unless. She pulled out her handheld scanner, checking atmospheric readings. There, trace amounts of bacteria from the human delegation's breath were spreading through the room's air circulation system. "Wait," she called out, stepping forward despite protocol. "It's not a weapon, it's just our natural biology. We're carbon-based life forms. We carry billions of harmless microorganisms as part of our normal functioning." The lead Arcturian's color shifted to a deeper crimson. "Deception. These organisms are designed to interact with crystalline matrices. To corrupt them." Sarah's heart pounded as she realized the horrifying truth. Their normal human bacteria, completely harmless to them, must appear as sophisticated biological weapons to the crystalline Arcturians. Every breath they took looked like an attack. "Please, let me explain," she said, pulling up bacterial chemistry diagrams on her tablet. "These are natural organisms that evolved alongside us. They're not weapons, they're part of who we are." But the Arcturians were already stepping back into their transport field. "This meeting is terminated. Any further attempt at contact will be considered an act of war." "No, wait dash," Martinez started to say, but they were gone, leaving only a fading blue light and a sense of impending disaster. Sarah stared at the empty space where they had been, her mind already racing through the implications. Humanity's first diplomatic contact had just turned into a potential interstellar war, all because of a basic biological incompatibility they hadn't even considered. "Dr. Chen," Martinez said, his voice tight with controlled panic. "I need options. Now." Sarah looked down at her tablet, still displaying the bacterial diagrams. Something wasn't adding up. The Arcturians had studied human biology before agreeing to this meeting. They should have known about this. Unless. "Sir," she said slowly, "I don't think this was a misunderstanding. Someone wanted this meeting to fail." Martinez's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "The Arcturians had our full biological data for months. This reaction doesn't make sense unless." She paused, double-checking her scanner's readings. "Unless someone altered their data to make our normal bacteria look like weapons. The readings they're getting aren't natural, they've been manipulated." The Secretary General's face darkened. "Are you suggesting sabotage?" "Yes," Sarah said, her mind already turning to the implications. "But not by us, and not by them. Someone else is playing both sides. As if to punctuate her words, a distant flash lit up the observation window. An Arcturian scout ship had just jumped into the system, its weapons visibly charging. The game was on, and humanity had just been dealt a very bad hand. The emergency council chamber aboard the ISS Alpha buzzed with barely contained panic. Holographic displays showed a growing number of Arcturian warships jumping into the solar system, while Earth's hastily assembled defense fleet took up defensive positions around the planet. Sarah Chen stood before the assembled military and civilian leadership, her hands steady as she manipulated the three-dimensional display showing her findings. The bacterial signatures were artificially modified to appear threatening to Arcturian biosensors. This wasn't a natural misunderstanding, it was engineered. Admiral Wong leaned forward, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic data streams. By whom? We've only encountered the Arcturians. There are no other spacefaring races in our region of space. That's what we thought, Sarah said, pulling up a new set of readings. But look at this energy signature from the sabotage data. It doesn't match either human or Arcturian technology. It's completely alien. The room erupted in murmurs. Secretary General Martinez raised his hand for silence. Dr. Chen, are you suggesting there's another alien civilization out there? One that wanted this meeting to fail? Yes, and I think I know why. Sarah brought up a star chart. Both humanity and the Arcturians are expanding into this region of space. Together, we could establish a powerful alliance. But divided. She let the implication hang in the air. We'd be vulnerable, Admiral Wong finished. Easy pickings for a more advanced civilization. A sudden alert cut through the tension. One of the sensor operators called out, "Unknown ship detected." It just decloaked near the Lunar Research Station. The main display shifted to show a sleek vessel unlike anything they'd seen before. It was neither the crystalline architecture of Arcturian ships nor the utilitarian design of human vessels. Instead, it seemed to bend light around itself, its true form difficult for the eye to track. That's them, Sarah breathed. The third party. Before anyone could respond, the ship fired a single pulse of energy at the lunar station. But instead of an explosion, the station's communications array lit up with activity, broadcasting on all frequencies. It's transmitting something, the comm officer reported. Some kind of data packet, it's huge. Starting decryption now. Sarah's tablet pinged as it began receiving the data. Her eyes widened as she read. This is incredible. They're called the Nexus. They're not just trying to start a war between us and the Arcturians. They've been doing this for millennia, keeping younger civilizations fighting each other to prevent any alliance that could challenge their dominance. The data continued streaming in, records of dozens of engineered conflicts, species manipulated into destroying each other, all to maintain the Nexus's grip on the galaxy. They're not even trying to hide anymore, Martinez said grimly. Why show their hand now? A new voice answered, deep, resonant, and coming from everywhere at once. Because, primitive ones, it no longer matters if you know. The holographic displays flickered and reformed into a single figure, a being of pure energy, its form constantly shifting between shapes that hurt to look at. Your species and the Arcturians have advanced too quickly, the Nexus being said. Together, you might one day threaten our dominion. Apart, you will destroy each other, and the natural order will be maintained. Sarah noticed something odd about the transmission. The being was speaking with absolute confidence, yes, but there was something else in its voice. Fear. You're right, she said suddenly, stepping forward. We have advanced quickly. Both of us. Faster than you expected. Faster than any species you've manipulated before. She smiled, a dangerous glint in her eye. And that scares you, doesn't it? The being's form flickered. Your primitive attempts at psychology are dash. You wouldn't have revealed yourself if you were truly in control, Sarah pressed. You're not here to gloat. You're here because your usual methods failed, and you're desperate to prevent what's coming. The Nexus being's form pulsed with anger. Silence. You understand nothing. But Sarah had seen enough. She turned to Martinez. Sir, we need to get this data to the Arcturians immediately. The Nexus wouldn't be here unless they were worried about losing control. Which means we still have a chance to stop this war before it starts. Martinez nodded, but Admiral Wong cut in, the Arcturians have blocked all communications. They're not listening to anything we broadcast. Then we'll have to make them listen, Sarah said, her mind already forming a plan. And I think I know someone who can help us. She pulled up a classified file she wasn't supposed to have access to, data on an Arcturian exile who had been living secretly on Earth. Tal, she read aloud. Former member of the Arcturian Science Council, who warned them about anomalies in the data about humans. They dismissed him as paranoid and stripped him of his position. She looked up at Martinez. We need to find him. Now. The Nexus being's hologram crackled with interference. You will not survive long enough to dash. The transmission cut off as the alien ship suddenly cloaked itself again. Multiple Nexus ships decloaking throughout the system, the sensor operator shouted. They're targeting both human and Arcturian vessels. Sarah watched as chaos erupted across the solar system. The Nexus had just made their biggest mistake, giving both humanity and the Arcturians a common enemy. Now she just had to find Tal before it was too late. The real war was about to begin, and it wasn't the one anyone had expected. The abandoned research facility on Mars Valles Marineris was the last place Sarah expected to find an exiled Arcturian scientist, but the crystalline being before her pulsed with unmistakable intelligence. Tal's translucent form had adapted to the red planet's dust, taking on a rusty hue that made him almost invisible against the canyon walls. You were right, Sarah said, setting down her tablet displaying the Nexus data. About everything. Tal's body flickered with bands of deep blue, a sign of bitter satisfaction she'd learned from her research. Knowledge without action is merely trivia, Dr. Chen. My warnings went unheeded, and now both our species stand on the brink of destruction. A distant explosion lit up the Martian sky, another battle between Nexus ships and the combined human Arcturian forces that were still shooting at each other as often as their common enemy. 3 days of chaos had left the solar system a battlefield, with the Nexus methodically destroying any attempts at communication between the two species. That's why I'm here, Sarah said. You understand both sides. You lived among humans after your exile. You know we're not the threat the Arcturian leadership believes we are. Tal moved closer, his crystalline form humming with internal energy. The Nexus's deception runs deeper than mere biological data. They have agents embedded in both our governments, pushing us toward conflict for centuries. Your discovery of their manipulation was unprecedented, and it terrifies them. Sarah's eyes widened. Embedded agents? How is that possible? The Nexus are energy beings. They can inhabit physical forms, Tal explained, his color darkening. It's how I discovered their existence. One tried to possess me, but my crystalline matrix rejected the intrusion. That's when I started investigating human biological data, and found the alterations. A proximity alarm blared from Sarah's equipment. Something just entered Mars orbit, she reported, checking the readings. Multiple signatures. Nexus ships. They found us. No, Tal's form pulsed with urgent colors. They followed you. I warned you coming here was too risky. We're out of options, Sarah countered, pulling up a schematic on her tablet. The Arcturian flagship is approaching Earth for a final confrontation. If we don't stop this war now, the Nexus won't need to destroy us, we'll do it ourselves. Tal moved to examine the schematic. You said you had a plan? Sarah nodded, bringing up more diagrams. Your crystalline biology isn't just resistant to Nexus possession, it can detect their energy signature. And my research shows human bacteria can actually disrupt their ability to maintain physical form. Apart, these are weaknesses they can exploit. Together, we could create a weapon, Tal finished, his colors shifting to excited purples. A way to expose their agents and prevent them from possessing new hosts. The facility shook as something heavy landed nearby. Sarah checked her sensors again. We've got company. Nexus ground forces approaching. They'll be possessing combat drones, Tal said. The Nexus prefer not to risk their true forms in direct confrontation. Sarah quickly began gathering equipment. How long would you need to synthesize a detection system? Hours we don't have, Tal's form rippled with frustration. Unless. He moved to a sealed chamber in the back of the lab, his colors pulsing rapidly. My original research. I was developing a way to help humans and Arcturians communicate on a biological level, to prevent exactly this kind of misunderstanding. The sound of metal being torn apart echoed from the facility's entrance. Sarah's hand went to the pulse pistol at her hip, not that it would do much good against possessed combat drones. Whatever we're doing, we need to do it fast, she said, setting up defensive positions around Tal's work area. Those drones will be through the outer doors in minutes. Tal's crystalline form began to glow brighter as he worked, combining human and Arcturian biotechnology in ways neither species had imagined possible. The Nexus believe themselves superior because they can exist as pure energy, he said as he worked. But that makes them vulnerable to the right combination of physical interference. Sarah fired a warning shot as shadows appeared in the corridor. Less theorizing, more synthesizing. The first combat drone rounded the corner, a nightmare of black metal and crackling energy fields, its movements jerky and unnatural under Nexus control. Sarah's pulse pistol barely scratched its armor. Tal. She called urgently. Almost. The Arcturian scientist's body was now glowing so brightly it hurt to look at him directly. The combination of your bacterial compounds and my crystalline resonance should create a cascading disruption effect. The drone raised its weapon arm. Sarah dove behind a lab bench as superheated plasma melted through the spot where she'd been standing. Any time now, she shouted, returning fire from behind cover. Done. Tal's form pulsed with triumph. He held up a small device that combined organic and crystalline components in a way that seemed to defy physics. But we need to get this to both fleets before dash. The ceiling exploded inward. Sarah looked up to see more combat drones descending through the breach, their weapons powering up. They were surrounded. Surrender the device, one of the drones spoke with the same resonant voice they'd heard on the ISS, your species have served their purpose. Accept your extinction with dignity. Sarah looked at Tal, saw his colors shift to match her own determination. They had the key to saving both their species. Now they just had to figure out how to get out of an impossible situation on Mars, reach two hostile fleets about to annihilate each other, and somehow convince both sides to trust the combined work of a discredited scientist and a human xenobiologist. Just another day trying to prevent an interstellar war. Sarah's fingers flew across her tablet's surface as she programmed the facility's ancient defense systems. Beside her, Tal's crystalline form pulsed with rapid colors as he integrated their anti-Nexus device into her suit's power systems. Above them, possessed combat drones cut through the ceiling with plasma torches. The device's range is limited, Tal said, his voice humming with urgency. We'll need to get within 1 kilometer of any Nexus-controlled host to expose them. So we just need to get close to the leaders of both fleets, Sarah muttered, activating the facility's last operational mining laser. Simple. The laser burst through the wall behind the drones, the sudden depressurization pulling them toward the breach. Sarah grabbed a support beam as the lab's atmosphere vented explosively into the Martian air. Tal's crystalline form remained steady, unaffected by the thin atmosphere. Your suit is sealed, he asked. Sarah checked her indicators. For now. We've got maybe 6 hours of air. She pulled up the tactical display. The Arcturian flagship is holding position near Earth's moon. The human command carrier is in high Mars orbit. If we can reach my ship in the south hangar. More drones approaching, Tal warned, his colors shifting to alert patterns. The Nexus are not accustomed to resistance. They're growing desperate. The tactical display lit up with new signatures, dozens of them, converging on their position. Sarah smiled grimly. Desperate enough to make mistakes. Look at their flight pattern. Tal studied the display, his colors brightening with understanding. They're pushing us toward the geothermal vents. Which would be a great strategy, Sarah said, if someone hadn't spent the last 3 hours reprogramming the vent controls. She hit a final command on her tablet. The Martian ground shook as ancient machinery groaned to life. Superheated steam burst from dozens of vents, catching the approaching drones in a web of scalding gas. Their Nexus controllers, unused to dealing with physical damage, struggled to maintain control of their hosts. Now. Sarah grabbed the anti-Nexus device and ran for the south corridor, Tal gliding swiftly beside her. Behind them, confused drones crashed into each other in the steam cloud. They reached the hangar to find Sarah's ship intact but surrounded by more drones. These ones stood motionless, their energy fields crackling with unusual patterns. They're not possessed, Tal observed, his colors showing confusion. The Nexus are using them as raw material. Converting them into something. The drones began to melt, their metal components flowing together like mercury. The resulting mass rose up, taking on a form that hurt Sarah's eyes to look at, a physical manifestation of a Nexus being. Your resistance exceeds acceptable parameters, the thing said in that same resonant voice. We have maintained order in this galaxy for millions of years. We will not allow primitive species to disrupt the balance. You mean your control, Sarah countered, carefully maneuvering toward the ship's access panel while keeping the creature's attention. You're not maintaining order, you're enforcing stagnation. Keeping younger species from reaching their potential. Potential leads to chaos, the Nexus beings' form rippled. Look at what your species have already done, polluted worlds, waged wars, spread your corrupt biology across the stars. The Arcturians are no better, seeding crystals that disrupt natural energy patterns. Tal's colors flashed with anger. We pursued knowledge, understanding. You fear what we might become. Fear. The creature's form expanded, filling the hangar with shifting patterns of light and metal. We are beyond fear. We are the shepherds of galaxy. The maintainers of order. Sarah reached the access panel, her fingers finding the emergency override. You keep using words like order and balance, she said. But I don't think those mean what you think they mean. She slammed the override. The hangar's electromagnetic containment field inverted, creating a pulse that disrupted the Nexus being's control over its physical form. The creature shrieked in frequencies that cracked the hangar's windows. Tal, now. Sarah activated the anti-Nexus device as Tal's crystalline form began to resonate at matching frequencies. The combination of human bacteria and Arcturian crystal energy created a cascading wave that tore through the Nexus being's energy pattern. For a moment, they saw its true form, a complex matrix of pure energy, ancient and alien. Then it dissolved, its component energies scattering into harmless radiation. It worked, Sarah breathed, checking the device's readings. The combination of technologies actually worked. One Nexus down, Tal said, his colors steady with determination. Now we just need to reach the fleets and convince them to use this on every suspected Nexus infiltrator before they destroy each other. Sarah ran to her ship, starting the pre-flight sequence. We'll have to split up. You take the device to the Arcturian flagship, they'll listen to one of their own before they'll listen to me. I'll handle the human forces. Sarah, Tal's colors shifted to concerned purples. We don't know if your ship can survive getting close to either fleet in the middle of a battle. And even if we expose the Nexus agents. Then we better make it count, she said, tossing him a transmitter linked to her tablet. Because we're not going to get a second chance. The ship's engines roared to life as more Nexus forces converged on the hangar. Above, the first shots of the final battle between humans and Arcturians lit up the Martian sky like new stars. The race to prevent two civilizations from unknowingly doing the Nexus's work for them had begun. Sarah's ship shuddered as another energy blast passed too close for comfort. The space between Mars and Earth had become a deadly maze of warring vessels, energy weapons, and debris. Her sensors showed the Arcturian and human fleets moving into final attack positions, with Nexus ships striking opportunistically at both sides. Tal, status, she called over the quantum comm. Approaching Arcturian lines, his voice crackled with interference. Their defensive grid is formidable. But I'm detecting unusual energy patterns in their command structure. Nexus influence. Sarah checked her own readings of the human fleet. Similar energy distortions surrounded the command carrier. Same here. The Nexus have their agents right at the top. They're the ones pushing for this final battle. She banked hard to avoid a piece of destroyed cruiser, her small ship's maneuverability keeping her alive where larger vessels would have been hit. The human fleet's command carrier loomed ahead, its point defense systems already tracking her approach. This is Dr. Sarah Chen, she broadcast on all frequencies. Authorization code Sierra Echo 97. I have critical information about Nexus infiltration of command staff. Request emergency landing. Authorization codes accepted, a computerized voice responded. But approach vector is denied due to combat conditions. Stand down and dash. The voice cut off, replaced by a deeper, resonant tone she recognized. Your interference ends now, Dr. Chen. Her ship's controls locked up as an override signal took hold. The Nexus had control of the carrier's systems. She was being pulled in, not to the landing bay, but straight toward the vessel's main reactor exhaust. Not today, Sarah muttered, pulling out her tablet. She'd prepared for this, spending the flight time writing a virus that combined human coding with fragments of Arcturian crystal communication patterns. She broadcast it through her ship's quantum comm array. The carrier's tractor beam flickered as her code attacked its systems. The Nexus's control wasn't as complete as they thought. They understood the technology they'd manipulated civilizations into creating, but they didn't truly understand how it worked. Sarah's ship broke free just as Tal's voice came through again. Sarah. I've penetrated their outer defenses, but something's wrong. The flagship's crystal matrix is destabilizing. The Nexus are trying to destroy it from within. Sarah looked up through her viewport to see the massive Arcturian flagship beginning to crack, lines of bright energy spreading through its crystalline structure. If it exploded this close to Earth. New plan, she said, plugging the anti-Nexus device into her ship's power core. Tal, remember how you said we needed to be within 1 kilometer to expose them? Yes, but no. Sarah, the power requirements would destroy your ship's systems. Better than letting them destroy Earth. She pushed her engines to maximum, heading straight for the space between the two fleets. Can you get the flagship's crystal matrix to resonate with the device's frequency? Yes, but the energy buildup. Sarah, this will kill you. She smiled grimly. Maybe. But it'll definitely kill the Nexus. Get ready. Her ship reached the midpoint between the fleets just as they opened fire on each other. Sarah activated the device at full power, channeling everything her ship had into it. The energy wave expanded outward, amplified by Tal's modifications to the Arcturian flagship's crystal matrix. Space itself seemed to ripple as human technology and Arcturian crystals created something entirely new, a wave of energy that was harmless to normal matter but anathema to Nexus energy patterns. On both command ships, possessed officers suddenly convulsed as their Nexus controllers were forcibly expelled. The energy beings tried to maintain their physical forms, but the combination of human bacteria and crystal resonance tore through their carefully maintained patterns. Sarah's ship's systems overloaded one by one as the wave expanded. Through failing sensors, she saw the Nexus ships trying to flee, their energy forms disrupted by the continuing pulse. Some made it. Many didn't. Tal, she called as her life support flickered. Did it work? Yes, his voice came through weakly. The Nexus signatures, they're gone. Both fleets are standing down. Sarah, hold on. I'm coming to dash. Her comms died. Then her engines. Then her life support. As darkness crept in at the edges of her vision, Sarah saw the Arcturian flagship moving toward her, its crystal structure still intact. Her last thought before losing consciousness was that maybe, just maybe, they'd succeeded in doing more than exposing the Nexus. They'd proven that humans and Arcturians could work together. That biology and crystal, flesh and energy, weren't incompatible after all. That the galaxy was big enough for different kinds of life to coexist, if they could just learn to understand each other. She woke up in a crystal medical pod aboard the Arcturian flagship, Tal's familiar form pulsing with relieved colors beside her. On the pod's display, she could see both fleets holding position, their weapons powered down. Representatives from both sides were already meeting to discuss what had happened, and what would happen next. The Nexus were wrong about us, Tal said, his colors shifting to thoughtful blues. They saw our differences as a source of conflict. They never considered that those same differences, combined properly, could create something entirely new. Sarah looked out the window at the assembled ships, human and Arcturian vessels now flying joint patrols, watching for any sign of returning Nexus ships. They thought keeping us apart made them strong, she said. But bringing us together made us stronger. Indeed, Tal agreed, his crystal form resonating with harmonics that somehow complemented the steady beep of her human medical monitors. Though we should expect them to return eventually. They've had millions of years to spread their influence. Sarah smiled, already thinking about how to combine more aspects of human and Arcturian technology. Let them come, she said. We'll be ready. Together. The stars shone steadily through the flagship's crystal walls as humanity and the Arcturians began the long process of building something the Nexus had never imagined possible, a true alliance between different forms of life. Not maintained by force or fear, but built on understanding and cooperation. The galaxy was changing. And for the first time in millions of years, it was changing for the better.